Today I'm super excited to talk about Immortals of Aveum. You don't see a lot of first-person shooters on the channel here, but it's actually one of our personal favourite genres. So when a new game comes along with vibrant and gorgeous graphics and puts a magic fantasy twist on the FPS genre, you know we have to check it out. So a big thank you to EA for sponsoring us so we can take a closer look at what Immortals of Aveum actually is and give you guys the starter rundown. And there'll be a link down below so you can check out the game if you're interested. One thing you might want to know is that the game is being made by Ascendant Studios. It makes sense if you haven't heard of them before because it's a new and independent studio, but there are a ton of experienced industry veterans working on this game as the developers. So although it's their first title as a new independent studio, they definitely are hitting the ground running with a lot of talent. If you don't know anything about Immortals of Aveum, well, it's a single-player FPS magic shooter that's set in a fantasy world called Avium. Think of your typical FPS game, but instead it's in a vibrant but war-torn fantasy setting, and instead of switching between guns, you're slinging and casting magical spells and abilities. You'll be playing as Jack, who grew up powerless and destitute, but it becomes known that he's actually an unforeseen. This is someone who unexpectedly and suddenly unlocks their magical abilities later on in life. The world of Avium is rife with conflict, and a war is raging on called the Endless War, where kingdoms vie over total control over the magic in the lands. And after centuries of a stalemate between the two most powerful kingdoms, Rashan, the main bad guy, has pushed Lucium to the brink of destruction, which is the kingdom we're a part of. Our character Jack must now work to become an Immortal, which is an elite order of the most powerful battle mages and protectors of Lucium to uncover the mysteries of Avium's troubled past. If you're wondering where and when you can play it, it's out now and you can play it on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S and PC. Furthermore, the magic within Avium is separated into 3 colours and forms: blue for force, red for chaos and green for life. And Jack is actually a Triarch, which means he has a rare ability to be able to wield all of the magic, which is shown through your own playstyle by having access to all different kinds of magical spells which act like point and click guns. As a Triarch, you can control the 3 different colours of magic within the world. As said before, red is more your up-close and personal playstyle, similar to shotguns and grenade launchers. It embodies entropy and violence, and its spells can create, rend, and harness energy in extreme ways. Meanwhile, the blue magic is for more precision and ranged plays, similar to marksman rifles and hand cannons. Blue embodies force and the physical manipulation of matter. And then you have green magic, which embodies growth, death, and transition. This one is for firing more rapid homing projectiles and is probably the closest to an assault rifle. But in total, there are over 25 spells for you to use and an 80-point talent tree to upgrade your character and specialize into either one form of magic or spread it between the different forms to create your own unique combos and playstyles. Within each of these magic color types, there are different sigils that you can get. These are effectively like different types of guns within those magic categories. They're basically magic gauntlets that let you harness the different colors of magic in a different way to kill your foes. These can also be upgraded and crafted later on to improve their stats. And you can find totems which will give you higher stats and cause you to deal more damage, and you can find these by defeating stronger enemies, exploring and solving puzzles. On top of this, you have additional powers. One is your augments, which are kind of like your utility spells, and they're more defensive and movement focused. Think of things like teleport blinks and shielding yourself. But you also have dominions, which is kind of like your ultimate move and your strongest ability. This requires you to build up your Dominion bar, but it does pay off with an awesome move such as Immolate, which is more or less your own laser beam. And then you have control spells which act as quick firing spells for either crowd controlling enemies or debuffing them in a pinch. For this you have your Lash, which lets you pull enemies towards you, which is great to follow up with a red type of magic that's more close range and more burst damage heavy. And then you have my personal favourite, your Furies, which are essentially powerful area of effect abilities that are super universal and useful in combat. They require mana to cast, but can do a variety of things like break enemy shields or do a massive AoE around you. The game is also running on Unreal Engine 5, which does show in its visuals. The graphical effects and the world itself are both really nice to look at. So if you like spectacular games with flashy effects and crazy things going on, Immortals of Aveum definitely delivers on that front. When I traditionally think of FPS games, I imagine myself running around constantly shooting enemies, and that's pretty much what you get with a lot of more modern FPS titles. However, within Immortals, I was pleasantly surprised that there's actually a fair bit of exploration and puzzle solving that essentially lets you branch out of just shooting enemies over and over again. The puzzles that you can solve are actually fairly interesting and rewarding, often giving you new gear pieces or things that improve your character. It was a nice and welcome change in the FPS genre, as usually you're just constantly killing enemies back to back as you move through the story. But this gave you a little bit of respite and break in between as you travelled the very nice fantasy environment and powered up your character by solving a few puzzles here or there. There's also an abundance of chests and things to break in order to get some extra materials and gold that will come in handy later on within the game. So if you're someone that likes to explore every nook and cranny and go down every alternate path and corridor, this game will probably please you because there's a bunch of extra goodies and things you can get if you put a little bit of time into exploring. Also, if you're wondering about the control scheme of the game, there is support for both controller and keyboard and mouse. And I will say I myself am a primary keyboard and mouse player, but had no issues playing on controller at all. It was quite intuitive. Now that you understand most of the concepts of the game, you're pretty much ready to hit the ground running. If you're looking for a romp of a time to run through different vibrant fantasy maps while slinging spells and blowing up enemies in spectacular visual ways, Immortals of Aveum is definitely going to scratch that itch for you. And if you do want to check the game out, there is a link down below that you can click to find out more. And if you haven't seen the 2 videos on the screen now, you should probably check them out because we have loads of videos coming your way that you don't want to miss out on. With lots of games coming up, we're probably going to have you covered with something. And make sure to tell us what you think after watching in the comments down below.